If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hello and welcome to How Did This Not Get Made?
This is the podcast all about the movies you never saw, the scripts that were never filmed, and the ideas that never even made it to the page. My name is David Spencer.
My name is Daniel Kaka.
Oh, hey, it is me, Alexa Quizon, and I'm back. Yes.
Yay.
Hello.
I was waiting for someone to say and so the silence was my cue. There you go. I did it.
See, we expect you to just immediately know the format after being on here exactly one time. You're a professional podcaster after all. How can you not figure this out?
I just am happy to be here. So every experience that I have, I just go, well, that was in the past. It was a lovely time. I'm never going to have this again. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm being asked back and I'm like, what? This is great. They like me. And then, Of course, I fuck up the intro, which is great.
Yeah, this is Alexa's second time on here as our other Pipe Dream podcast person, which of course also means that you've been on here exactly 2 more times than Michael has.
Actually, no, you've been on here 3 times. You were here for Spider-Man, but you just played Mary Jane. You came on for Tin Toy Christmas, and do you know why we have you here today?
I do. Number 1, I just want to say, suck it, Michael. Number 2, go ahead.
So we are here because of a certain filmmaker. His name is Chris Sanders. What do you know about Chris Sanders?
Chris Sanders, no relation to Colonel Sanders. I know that he is responsible for animating Lilo and Stitch. And honestly, that's all I need to know as a person, because Lilo and Stitch is a wonderful, wonderful movie. And I am just always happy to find out he was a part of that.
I know he directed Lilo and Stitch, and I also know he directed How to Train Your Dragon, which I know is one of the more beloved DreamWorks movies. I have like a lower view of that movie. I know like a lot of people really love it, but I did not enjoy it when it first came out because I was in high school. There was a group of us hanging out in something and deciding what to do. And a couple of people wanted to go see How to Train Your Dragon. And I was like, I don't want to sit in a movie theater right now. I want to actually like hang out with you people. I know it's shocking that me didn't want to sit in a movie theater, but I didn't for whatever reason this day. And so finally I got upset and I was like, I don't even need to sit in this movie. I can tell you exactly what's going to happen in this movie. And I sat there at dinner and I wrote down on a napkin. I had seen one trailer and it was like, wrote out like 2 paragraphs of like, this is everything that's going to happen in the movie. I was only wrong about one thing. My description of the movie ended with, and at the end, everybody in the town flies on their dragons and it's this big sweeping shot through all the town and then it fades to black. And I was wrong. It faded to white at the end.
Wow. Okay.
But I was able to predict a whole bunch of the other stuff, which I think just means that it's a 3-act story structure. And at this point, like I was already aware of like how those probably work. And I was like, he's going to have conflict with his dad and put off from the rest of the town. But of course, he's going to figure out how to come back. So like I went into that movie already kind of primed to not enjoy it as much. I think that experience did something for me in the way I see movies. I get really frustrated by people who watch movies in an effort to predict them and try to figure out what's going to happen, which is exactly what I did. But because of that experience and it kind of ruining an otherwise good movie for me, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to think about what's going to happen. Sometimes I watch movies with somebody else. I'm not going to name any names, but they like to try to predict what's going to happen next. And they like to go, I wrote this movie because they were able to figure out what the next scene is. And at this point, I'm just like, let's just enjoy it. Don't be high school me. Just watch a movie.
Which leads to why you've asked me to be on this show today. First of all, F you, David, for calling me out.
I will say that it's not as annoying as questioning what's going to happen next when that is going to be answered within like 5 seconds from there.
Or just like, who is this person? Like, the point is that we don't know.
Yeah.
It's not even necessarily that we're going to learn later. Sometimes the point is that we just don't know.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Like if a new character gets introduced into the plot, like the door has opened to introduce that character and immediately I'm bombarded with questions of like, oh, who's that? What's their name? What do they do? Are they the killer?
This has happened to me a couple of times where somebody's like, oh, who's this person? And then in the movie, they explain exactly who they are. And then I get to just repeat exactly what the line was that was said in the movie.
I need to start doing that.
In my defense, okay, I'm not the person that's like, who's that? Who's this? Who's that?
Yeah, Alexa's not that
I'm
person.
not that person. You have to understand, I'm a woman in the film industry, okay? Or at least I was a woman in the film industry. It's all about competition. It's like, yeah, do you know what this movie is? Do you know what this movie's about? Do you know what the themes are? So I have to do research ahead of time so that people are be like, oh yeah, do you know this movie? I was like, oh, just you wait. Watch me drop my knowledge and I'm going to predict this movie. And if I predict the movie, that's a win for me. See,
it'll also happen where Alexa will ask me, like, what do you think is going to happen? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not thinking about what's going to happen. I'm thinking about what's happening right now.
It's secretly a competition between you and my... you've never wanted to be a part of it. It's something that I've embedded in myself just to prove something to the world, and I apologize. I am who I am.
I've had this experience where I watched A Girl on a Train in a movie theater, and I saw it with one of my friends. And she leaned over to me. We were in the middle of the movie theater. She had read the book before. And like the movie had just premiered. So she turned to me and she's like, who do you think the killer is? And I was like, well, this is a mostly female protagonist, female empowerment movie. So I'm going to guess it's the only guy in this movie that's the killer. Turns out it was.
Oh my goodness. And it wasn't the train.
It was.
So
And it was the train.
But we are not here to discuss murderous trains. We are here, like I mentioned before, about Chris Sanders, but more specifically about a movie that he nearly made called American Dog. Now, I looked into this movie and I realized that there wasn't really much about the production, or at least like there wasn't enough to like make this whole grander story like we usually do with our podcast. It came out to about 2 pages of notes, which is not really much. So I figured that I wanted to go into the history of another American dog that you may have heard of, named Rin Tin Tin. Have you heard of Rin Tin Tin before?
Yeah.
hey, he's got a star on Hollywood Walk of Fame.
He does.
Yeah. That little scamp. Yeah.
So I want to go into a little bit of the history of Rin Tin Tin and why he was so significant, because the idea of putting dogs or animals in movies is not foreign. It's not unusual, and Rin Tin Tin is not the first, but he is probably one of the most significant dog actors that are out there. So we'll go through a little bit about who he is. So Rin Tin Tin was discovered by Corporal Lee Duncan, who is an aerial gunner for the U.S. Army Air Service. On September 15th, 1918, he was sent to Fleury, which is a small French village, and he was there to find a suitable flying field for his unit, the 135th Aerial Squadron. When Duncan arrived, he found the area had been damaged by bombs and artillery, but in his discovery, he found a damaged kennel that supplied German shepherds for the Imperial German Army. Inside the kennel, Duncan discovered one German shepherd, a mother nursing 5 puppies that were less than a week old. He made the decision to rescue the dogs and bring them back to his unit. There, the mother was given to an officer, 3 puppies were given to other soldiers, and for Lee Duncan, he kept 2, a boy and a girl, that he named Nanette and Rin Tin Tin. In July of 1919, after the war was over, Duncan snuck his dogs onto a ship that took them to Long Island. While entering into the U.S., as a way for Duncan to keep his dogs, he put them in the care of Mrs. Leo Weiner, who was a breeder and helped raise police dogs. While in her care, Nanette was diagnosed with pneumonia. When she gave back Rin Tin Tin to Lee, she also gave him another German shepherd to raise instead, and promptly named that puppy Nanette II, or Nanette the Second.
A sequel, yeah.
Sorry, I just like that it's Nanette too.
Yeah. With Duncan, Nanette, Rin Tin Tin, united again. They all moved out to Los Angeles, California. You guys know that place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Packed in little suitcases, walked there, yeah.
In 1922, Duncan became one of the founding members of the Shepherd Dog Club of California and helped put together their first dog show, and thought that Rin Tin Tin would definitely win a few prizes for attending. Although Rin Tin Tin was able to show off some of the physical abilities, overall he performed poorly, showing he had a lot of aggression, he had a temper, he was growling, barking, and snapping during the competition. The worst for Rin Tin Tin happened shortly after, when he was out for a walk with Duncan. A bundle of newspaper which was thrown out of a truck actually landed on Rin Tin Tin's left front leg, causing it to break. The leg took about 9 months to heal, but soon after, Rin Tin Tin was competing in the German Shepherd Dogs in Los Angeles dog show. Whew, really need to start coming up with acronyms for these guys. There, Charlie Jones, who had developed a slow-motion camera, filmed the dogs, and when Duncan saw his dog in slow motion, he realized Rin Tin Tin could be a movie star. Duncan began shopping around Rin Tin Tin, as well as a screenplay that he had written that would star his dog. Yeah, I don't know why you're not doing this with Quasi right now.
I know, I was about to say, our little pup is a star, and the world needs to know this.
Yeah, exactly. And Duncan thought the same thing. Rin Tin Tin's great. Everyone needs to know it. Here's a script so you don't have to do anything.
It just feels like some real Sylvester Stallone energy.
Yeah. But Rin Tin Tin did get his first break, and it was actually in silent film. His first film was The Man from Hell's River, when he was asked to replace a wolf who was actually camera shy and was very difficult to work with. Rin Tin Tin proved his worth by showing he was easy to work with, and unfortunately billed as Rin Tan.
Yeah.
Later that year, he had a small role in the film My Dad, where his credits finally read Rin Tin Tin, played by himself. Now, Rin Tin Tin hit it big when Warner Brothers signed him on as a star in the 1923 film Where the North Begins. The film was a huge success, and so much so that it saved Warner Brothers from bankruptcy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it seemed like Rin Tin Tin was a savior that they needed to make money whenever the studio was in some sort of financial problems. And actually, because of this, he got the unofficial nickname the Mortgage Lifter. So... yeah, whenever they're in financial problems, you put out a Rin Tin Tin movie, and that's going to lift them out of bankruptcy.
I remember in film school, in film history class, learning about early Hollywood stuff, and I remember Rin Tin Tin being important, but I did not remember why or how.
Yeah, I do remember that story from working at Warner Brothers, was like, Rin Tin Tin is the reason why the studio is still here today. Otherwise, it would have folded or been bought out by Disney in the 20s.
This is truly a miracle story, because when I was in film school, the biggest piece of advice was never work with children, never work with animals. So this was truly an inspirational story of how a dog was like, not today, and then, triumphs.
Now, for Rin Tin Tin, he did actually star in 24 more films after that. So Warner Brothers was in a lot of trouble for a lot of their early years. He also made endorsements with a lot of dog food makers, including Kennel Ration, Kennel Biscuits, and Pup E Crumbles. So he was so well beloved that when it came to the first Academy Awards in 1929, not only was he nominated, but he actually won the majority of the votes to be the best actor of that year.
What?
Yep.
The Academy soon realized that this was a mistake that they did not want to happen, because they wanted these awards to be taken seriously. You know, how they're being taken seriously today.
I'm listening to a dog. Yeah.
So once they realized that we can't give the best actor to a dog the first time we're doing this, instead they gave it to the runner-up, which is Emil Jannings instead.
Oh, man. That's exactly like the story of our high school president, where Blastoise received the most votes for class president. relevant, but the school just pretended like he didn't and gave it to the runner-up instead.
Yeah.
But we all know that Blastoise got the most votes.
It's like in the UK where they actually honor their democracy, and now they have a boat out there that's called Boaty McBoatface. So, yeah. But soon after, talkies became all the rage in movies, and I think that's here to stay, I believe. Talkies, yeah.
I don't know. It's a
Yeah,
fad.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like this whole internet thing. It'll be around for a little bit. Because of that, Rin Tin Tin was actually let go from Warner Brothers. But instead of being faded out, Rin, he went on to do some vaudeville and ended up as the star of the TV series The Lone Defender.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am to have the privilege of presenting to you each week the introductory foreword of The Lone Defender, the star of which is a dog, probably the most famous dog in all the world, Rin Tin Tin.
Unfortunately, this all came to an end on August 10th, 1932, when Rin Tin Tin passed away in his home at Clubview Drive in LA.
Oh.
You can find his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It is currently at 1627 Vine Street, so if you want to go out there, check it out, you can. But during his lifetime, he and Nanette II produced 48 puppies that Duncan would either sell or give away as gifts. It is known that Greta Garbo, W.K. Kellogg, and Jean Harlow each have one of Rin Tin Tin's descendants. So his legacy lives on with Rin Tin Tin Jr., who went on to star in 11 films and 3 TV series. For Rin Tin Tin III, he starred in a film called, actually, The Return of Rin Tin Tin, where he played his grandfather.
Aw.
It's like Ice Cube's son playing him.
Exactly. Now, for Rin Tin Tin III, his most notable contribution is being recruited into the army, which actually helped recruit other dogs, like hundreds of dogs, to be part of the U.S. Army's Canine Corps.
Faithful to the end, Army dogs prove again that they're man's best friend.
I've also seen this name kind of floating around as Renty as well, as instead of saying Rin Tin Tin, everyone called him Renty every once in a while. But for Renty IV, he starred in the 1954 series The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin, which was a huge hit and would oftentimes come in conflict with those who were fans of Lassie. So you're thinking, which one is the real American dog? Is it Lassie? Is it Rin Tin Tin? I feel like Rin Tin Tin has a lot more weight to it, though. But Lassie does have a lasting effect. We still know Lassie to this day, and it's something that has not been around in decades.
When someone's trapped in a well.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if more people know about Lassie than know about Rin Tin Tin. We should put up a poll on Twitter. Who's more popular, Lassie or Rin Tin Tin?
I mean, Lassie saved actual lives. Rin Tin Tin ruined lives by winning Best Actor.
On September 20th, 1960, Lee Duncan passed away. Renty was originally buried in Los Angeles, but he was eventually moved to a pet cemetery in Paris. Now, it's presumed that Duncan had the Great Site move so that Rin Tin Tin could be back at where he was found originally in France. Today, the legacy lives on with Rin Tin Tin XII, who is actually the spokesdog for the American Humane Society.
Wow.
His legacy still lives on to this day.
Well, and you could also say that his legacy lives on in how many movies starring animals there are. I know as a kid, 2 of the VHS tapes that we had that I watched a ton were Air Bud and Homeward Bound. Those are 2 dog movies of the 90s, and I feel like there's a whole bunch of movies like that are movies featuring animals as actors.
I remember watching Beethoven a lot when I was a kid.
Oh my goodness.
I regularly watched the TV show Wishbone as well.
Oh,
Oh my
yes, of course,
goodness.
Wishbone. I just want to say Alexa laughed at me watching Air Bud, but didn't think it was equally hilarious that somebody would grow up with Beethoven. Air Bud is much better than Beethoven.
I feel like Beethoven is a lot more realistic, okay? Because Beethoven, first of all, would get into shenanigans, and Air Bud 2 was a star pupil. What? No. That's not real. Yeah. Doesn't make any sense, David.
I remember somebody on Twitter talking about how, so if the Air Buddies are Air Bud's puppies, I have not seen any of the movies past the first 2, but I know there's a whole cinematic universe now.
There is. If you go on Disney Plus, I believe Santa Paws is on there, and that is a descendant of Air Bud.
I think it was our friend over at Come On Fahuga Pods, Charlie, aka Popelick VA, talking about, so we know about the Air Buddies, so who is their mom? Who is the Air Bitch?
Oh my God! I'm a little conflicted because I know that's the proper term for a female dog, but why do I want to punch you in the face?
I'm sorry.
I will not actually punch you in the face.
There's just something inherently funny about the phrase Air Bitch.
I will agree with that.
Unless it's the phrase Alexa is the Air Bitch, then I'd be like, yes, you know.
That's going to be the R-rated version of Air Bud.
Air Bitch 2, slam dunk. Like, it's just like...
So I'm going to move on to Chris Sanders. Chris Sanders has probably influenced your life in more ways than you think. If you're a fan of Muppet Babies, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, and or Mulan, you've probably seen his artwork. He's directed Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon, The Croods, and most recently, The Call of the Wild with Han Solo. He's also the voice of Stitch.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, how? Wow.
Another iconic dog. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a dog?
Apparently, according to Disney, there was like a collection of Disney dogs, and Stitch just happens to be part of that collection. So I'm going to say yes, he's a dog. He's an alien dog.
It is kind of wild to think about how much Disney managed to make Stitch a Disney mascot, like to millennials as much as Mickey Mouse is.
There's a reason why Stitch became so popular. It's because when they were doing all these trailers for Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah, it's 100% those trailers.
Hey, that's not Simba.
Wow!
His name is Stitch.
Oh, great. He's loose.
Stitch sabotaging classic Disney moments. Like, everybody loves that. As much as we love the classic Disney movies, it's even funnier to see them shat on by Disney itself. So why not?
That's got to be one of the most classic, like, ad campaigns, especially for, like, movies and stuff, that was so clever and so good. And it definitely is what got me intrigued.
Yeah.
When we were a kid, we had vacation to Disney World. And this is at the time that like Lilo and Stitch was just premiering. And I remember going into their animation studio and it was animated right here in Florida where they did Lilo and Stitch. And I was just in awe for that. I think they were working on Brother Bear at the time that we were there.
Oh, Brother Bear. David loves that movie.
Brother Bear? Why do you keep saying that I love that movie?
It takes place
Because
in Alaska.
I like the fact that there's a movie that takes place in Alaska, but I have only seen that once when it first came out when I was a kid. I do not remember anything about that movie.
I am from Michigan, which means I have to love 8 Mile and RoboCop.
Well, first of all, every time Brother Bear shows up, David's like, that was made in Alaska, and he says it with such pride. So I like to make fun of him and say that he loves Brother Bear, the movie that not everybody knows about. But I just wanted to mention that with Stitch taking over like all the classic Disney moments, I actually own a pin, and I believe this is a real pin because we're pin traders at Disneyland, which is perfect for this episode. There's a pin of Stitch as Quasimodo from Hunchback of Notre Dame. So he's like ringing the bell tower, and it's like one of my favorite pins. And they did have a series of that. Stitch is one of the most popular pins that we get when we're pin trading.
I remember hearing somewhere, I don't remember how true this is, but characters from the Disney movies, you don't see them in any official merchandise, like outside of their environment. And like, that's a thing, like especially with pins, but Stitch is the exception to that, where Stitch is the only character from a movie, because like they'll do it with Mickey Mouse and stuff, but like Stitch is the only character from a movie that will be mixed with Star Wars or will be mixed with other franchises. Stitch is the only one that corporate is allowed to do that.
Yeah, he can fit him in anywhere, and it feels like he'll belong no matter what.
And again, it's part of those trailers going all the way back. It's the fault of those fantastic trailers.
Barely even friends, then somebody bends. Oh, honey. I'll be in my room. Get your own movie.
So let's talk a little bit about Chris Sanders. So he was born in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Chris Sanders grew up creating short stories and drew a lot. While attending Arvada High School, he was the cartoonist for their newspaper. His grandmother found out about the California Institute for the Arts in a random article and encouraged Chris to enroll. He made his way to the West Coast and graduated in 1984 from the Cal Arts Animation Program, the same program that John Lasseter, Brad Bird, and Tim Burton graduated from. For Sanders, he got his first start as a character designer for Muppet Babies. For a little bit, he worked at Marvel Productions before landing a job at Disney Studios as a storyboard artist. There he helped storyboard The Rescuers Down Under, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, and Mulan, and was eventually promoted for Mulan as the head of story. In the early 2000s, Disney was in the downfall of animation and their animated films weren't profiting like they were in the 90s. CEO of Disney at the time, Michael Eisner, was looking for a way to make low-cost animation movies that would help fund large budget movies. And this is a move that Disney has done before. In 1941, Dumbo was actually a low-cost production, and its profits helped fund more expensive films like Pinocchio and Fantasia. Sanders thought this would be a great idea to pitch a story about Stitch. For Chris, this character has been with him since 1985 when he first attempted to develop a children's book about an alien that thinks he's a dog in the middle of Kansas. Unfortunately, the book didn't get picked up or published. When Sanders pitched the story to Disney, he made the decision to change the setting from Kansas to the Hawaiian island of Kauai. Sanders defended his decision by stating, "Animation has been set so much in ancient medieval Europe. So many fairy tales find their roots there, that to place it in Hawaii was kind of a big leap, but the choice went to color the entire movie and rewrite the story." After they got the green light, Sanders looked to his Mulan co-writer, Dean Beloy, to help develop the story for Lilo and Stitch. Now, what is this about this unconventional studio when it came to animating Lilo and Stitch?
This was the second film that was animated at this Florida branch of the studio, the first one being Mulan. And I believe that, or at least the narrative that I've heard, is that this is in line with what you were talking about the cheap animation, the cheaper projects to help fund the more expensive projects. That Mulan was produced over in this side studio that was like also partial tourist attraction in the fact that it was at Disney's MGM Studios, where
that was the tour that I took when I was a kid, was like going through the animation studio because it was right there on the premises.
Part of the reason for making this studio in Florida is so that way it could also make a little bit of money as being a part of Disney World. Mulan ended up being a much bigger success than they expected, and it was the same situation with going into Lilo and Stitch, that it was like, this is going to be a smaller project. This is our offshoot side studio. That studio didn't have as much oversight as a lot of the Disney animation proper in Burbank. They were kind of free to experiment a little bit more and try different things a little bit more, which I think also is part of the reason why Lilo and Stitch especially has such an unconventional storyline.
They thought Mulan was not going to be successful, first of all. The woman saved China, first of all. Of course it was going to be successful.
Well, if you think about it this way, Mulan, would have been one of the only features that didn't feature white characters.
There we go.
I imagine that could be part of it, why they didn't put as much stock into it. Again, that is complete speculation on my part, but if you think about that era and the types of things that studios were focused on, I mean, I'm trying to think of other movies at the time. The only one I can think of is Pocahontas, which I'm not even sure if that came out before or after Mulan, but that was also had half of the characters in that movie were white.
Aladdin, too.
Pocahontas was at the peak of Disney animation in the 90s. That was 95.
Okay, and I believe Mulan was 96 or 97.
I remember having the VHSs very close together during that time. But then again, I was in the Philippines, so I must have received them late.
That movie highlights international culture in a way that like other Disney movies hadn't highlighted.
The other thing I wanted to say was, of course, when the studios didn't oversee a movie as much, it ended up being a lot better. So that's funny to me that you've mentioned that.
Yeah.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, we mentioned this before. Lilo and Stitch, they exploded when it premiered, and it made about $273.1 million in the box office and spawned off a number of spin-offs, like the direct-to-sequel Stitch the Movie, which served as the pilot for the 65-episode Lilo and Stitch the series, which ended with a direct-to-TV film, Leroy and Stitch. There was also another direct-to-video sequel, Lilo and Stitch, Stitch Has a Glitch, and as a DVD extra on that, there was a short, The Origin of Stitch. There's been a few video games, such as Trouble in Paradise, Experiment 626, and he's made a number of appearances in Kingdom Hearts.
That movie, I just feel like, is so special and so unique. It's alien sci-fi story mixed with this story of this broken family trying to stay together, mixed with it's set in Hawaii. It didn't need to be set in Hawaii, but that's just a decision that gives it even more personality. I love it when movies are willing to tell multiple kinds of stories and it being about the intersection of these different ideas, as opposed to like a lot of classic Disney Renaissance stuff. To go back to Mulan, for example, this is just a story about China and just about Mulan, and it doesn't have like these weird mix of genres and locations that go into it. I think that's one of the reasons why Lilo and Stitch is so memorable.
Yeah, it's also one of those stories, especially with Disney, that doesn't have to deal with some sort of royalty in some way.
Yeah, that's
so like
true.
Even when you had something unconventional like Pocahontas or Mulan, that's still dealing with some sort of royalty there. Even with Pocahontas is like dealing with the chief there and then like the colonials coming in. So yeah, this is the first time that we really are more grounded in the story. And there's even been arguments out there as far as like stories about sisters, like this is the better story to Frozen, for example.
There wasn't a lot of romance in this one. I mean, there is like a small indication that Nani was in love with David and he has a nice butt apparently, but that's like the only thing that happens there.
You're not really rooting for it, but it is like this cute side story.
Yeah, it's a cute butt.
It's not even really much of a story. There's no level of development. Their relationship doesn't really change throughout the course of the movie.
Yeah, it's not the main story. The story is about Stitch being accepted into this family. That is the relationship story there. Even with Edgar Wright, when he was making Hot Fuzz, in the first few drafts, they were trying to fit in a love story. But when Simon Pegg goes into the village, they tried developing a love story that he finds someone there and like develops into like this is where he needs to be. When they started developing the story more, they realized, oh, the relationship isn't a love story that we're rooting for. The real relationship that we want is the relationship between Nick Frost and Simon Pegg.
Yeah,
because
that's the love story.
It is technically, yeah, that's how it would work in that story.
No,
and that's
absolutely.
what we're rooting for, is for them to actually get along and be friends. That's what we want.
Yeah.
And the beauty of this movie in particular, of Lilo and Stitch, is that it's allowing female characters to be messy in a way. Because, yeah, you'll have Mulan, who's just like, she's very quirky, she's different from everyone in the town, but it's still written in a way that's kind of adorable in a sense. For Lilo, she literally beats up her classmate. And then she and Nani get into this screaming match, which I'm sure a lot of siblings can relate to.
Yeah.
Just screaming into a pillow. I think that was just one of the most realistic portrayals of any relationship ever, is just Nani trying not to yell at her sister. So she gets a pillow and she starts yelling at it, trying to keep it together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just love that. And of course, you know, Lilo likes to feed fish sandwiches, which makes sense, I guess. But
one of the other big reasons why it spoke to me as a kid was that was one of the few movies at the time that like dealt with broken families in a like real way. And as somebody who is, you know, I was still trying to process my parents' divorce and like all of the constant flux my family was in and trying to like keep that together, that seeing this picture of a family on screen that was not all put together, but still cared about each other, and it wasn't perfect, and it was messy, but it was honest, and it was not trying to dress it up to be something that it wasn't, and it was like another reason why that movie meant so much to me as a kid.
Disney does have a tendency to have the parents that passed away on almost every story that they've had, but there doesn't seem to be anybody dealing with that other than like, oh, I wish my mom was here, I wish my dad was here, I'm gonna go fall in love with this prince though. Like, it's like they're fixed because they found love. And in this story, it's almost like they have to go through this journey together. We actually see the process of them trying to keep this family together.
Yeah. From what I mentioned before, like all the spin-offs and sequels that were happening, so Chris Sanders was pretty busy for this, and eventually it felt like it was ready for him to move on from Stitch. The next movie that he wanted to do was about a famous TV star dog, and this movie was going to be titled American Dog. And in February of 2007, it was announced that Chris would be the writer and director of said film. From what I could find, because when it comes to animation, there's never really scripts that are out there. It's always like storyboards, which you can actually find some of the storyboards for this film out there. And it's actually some screenshots of the finished product as well. From what I could find, the plot was about a famous TV star dog named Henry, who is played as a secret agent on television. While filming, a stunt goes wrong, causing Henry to black out. The next thing he knows, he wakes up on a train in the middle of the Nevada desert. Stranded 2,000 miles away from home, he has to find his way back with the help of a one-eyed cat and a giant radioactive rabbit.
It sounds like there's definitely some inspiration from Rin Tin Tin and Lassie. Is this supposed to be like a modern TV show, or does this story, is it supposed to take place in the past when we would have had TV shows starring dogs?
I think this is supposed to be kind of a push into our obsession with like secret agents in a way. So like we had 007 at the time. I think at this time Kim Possible was a television show. So this idea of like living this double life of being a secret agent was definitely in the lexicon of modern media. So the first screening of American Dog did not go well. The story was considered too bold, and Disney was looking for something a lot more mainstream. John Lasseter actually attended 2 of these screenings of the film and gave notes to help improve the story. What led to the downfall is Sanders' refusal to consider any of the screening notes, and in June of 2007, Chris was let go from the project. Lasseter then said, Chris Sanders is extremely talented, but he couldn't take it to the place it had to be. Chris was then replaced with Chris Williams, who was the writer of Mulan, The Emperor's New Groove, Brother Bear, and went on to direct Big Hero 6 and Moana. And Brian Howard, who was an animator for Pocahontas, Mulan, Lilo and Stitch, Brother Bear, and Chicken Little, and would go on to direct Tangled and Zootopia. They were actually given 18 months to make this film, which is unlike most other animated movies, which are given 4 years to make. And this film was renamed Bolt.
You'll never see Penny again! And cut.
He's the star of the biggest show in Hollywood.
Yep.
It's funny because I was like, oh, he's going to tell me it was Bolt, because I searched up American Dog and then Bolt came out and I was like, this is the wrong dog. And I was like, wait a second, it's the same dog.
It is. For Sanders, he left Disney entirely and moved on to DreamWorks, where he created How to Train Your Dragon and The Croods. Chris did end up using the one-eyed cat character for his webcomic Kiskulu, a former animal actor, Ugo, who explores the happenings in a small town in Emergency, Alaska.
Hey!
I do love that he also seems to be really into the story of dogs, even though his 2 biggest movies, they're ostensibly about a boy and his dog, except in one it's a girl and her alien, and the other one it's a boy and his dragon. But both of those do still follow like a lot of that basic template of the young protagonist and their pet.
I thought you were going to say he really loves Alaska.
But like How to Train Your Dragon is so much of that dog story as well. Like there's so many parallels there. And of course it makes sense that he wanted to make American Dog. I just want to know about his own pet ownership.
Yeah, now I'm curious about that too.
Yeah, because there's no a powerful relationship than a person and their pet. Like, there really isn't. Fight me.
Speaking of someone with their dog, he eventually got to, well, in October of 2017, it was announced that Sanders would be directing the film adaptation of Jack London's The Call of the Wild for 20th Century Fox. In December of the same year, Comcast, or NBC Universal, and Disney were in a bidding war to buy Fox. And on July 19th, 2018, it was confirmed that Disney and Fox would merger for $71.3 billion. And Chris Sanders found himself working for the mouse once again. Plus, he is going to be reprising his role as Stitch in a live-action adaptation, which is going to be directed by John M. Chu. If you don't know who he is, he directed Crazy Rich Asians, Step Up 2 the Street, Step Up 3D,
and In the Heights.
And he's going to be directing In the Heights.
Woo!
Wait, I'm sorry. Did you say a live-action Lilo and Stitch?
Correct.
He's going to put on a costume made out of fur.
I don't like this.
He's going to walk around like the guy who played Roger Rabbit.
I don't like this. No. I mean, John Chu is great, but...
This is what everyone wanted. You wanted your live-action Disney. We're getting a live-action Stitch. You asked for this, America.
There's no way a weird CG Stitch is going to look any... no.
I feel like the only way that this movie would be good is if it was live-action people, but a 2D animated Stitch. Like, let's do it the Roger Rabbit way if we're going to do it this way.
I mean, I imagine that it's going to be on a similar level of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh, boy.
That's how I see it. And then everyone's going to have a huge backlash as to how he looks, and they'll be like, all right, we'll just reanimate it. We'll come back a few months later. Do you guys like him now?
His eyes are too realistic.
Do we know if there was any sort of studio meddling in Call of the Wild? Because Jack London books are like a big part of Alaska education, because it's like, hey, this is a big writer who writes stuff about Alaska. So I remember reading Call of the Wild and a bunch of other Jack London stuff as a kid. And when I saw trailers for the movie, and I was like, this is not the book that I read. I remember the book that I read being like intense and violent, and this is a family movie of Harrison Ford and this weird cartoon dog person. Hearing that was a movie that was in production during that buyout, and knowing about Chris Sanders' relationship with Disney, I'm now wondering if there was some behind-the-scenes shenanigans.
There has to be.
Disney Wild and real life Wild are completely different things. Okay.
There's definitely a lot of input that had to be put into this, especially making that transition. I mean, knowing Fox's involvement, especially when we did the Halo movie, I imagine that there was a lot of influence going into that. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, having to go back to Disney, and now that this is going to be a Disney movie, or at least under the Disney name, there had to have been so much more input being put in there, and I imagine the movie did not do well because of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's American Dog. Now, would we have liked to see American Dog over Bolt, or is Bolt just fine?
Well, I've never seen Bolt, and I had no interest in watching it. It seemed like a movie that wasn't made for me. Hearing that it only had 18 months, I was like, that makes sense. It does look like a movie that Disney just kind of swept under the rug and forgot about.
I guess I was an adult when Bolt came out, but I was just like, it always felt like an afterthought to me. It was just like, we need something cute. We need something adventurous. Bolt. You know?
Well, especially because it came out in one of Disney's, more awkward periods where they stopped doing 2D animation. It was all CG, but they hadn't really found their footing yet with CG animation, which I don't think happened until Tangled, and Bolt came out before Tangled, right?
Yes, it did.
Because there was like Chicken Little at the time as well, and like nobody wanted that.
Chicken Little and Meet the Robinsons, which I know has its fans, but is also like one of those movies that feels like the more in the awkward era of Disney.
Yeah. So maybe if Sanders was actually at the forefront of this movement of transitioning from traditional 2D animation to 3D animation, maybe that could have changed the landscape.
Especially because he delivered DreamWorks one of their, most beloved properties.
Yeah. So I think had he been leading that charge, especially with like Lilo and Stitch, like that surprised so many people, especially like, yeah, Disney was on the downswing of like these animated films aren't going anywhere. So they kind of were like, yeah, sure, make Lilo and Stitch and we'll just kind of forget about it afterwards. And it became this massive, huge hit. So,
I mean, I'm surprised that they called American Dog too ambitious. I mean, first of all, the storyline that you laid out doesn't seem that crazy ambitious, but also, it's animation. Whatever you can think of, you could just draw and make happen. What was so ambitious about American Dog? Or was Disney already at that moment starting to go away from traditional 2D animation?
Well, the dog had like a medical emergency, right? And then like he woke up in a train. So that feels like Memento to me, but like with dogs. They were probably like, no, that's too intense for the children's. It's sad because I feel like being bold would have been probably a better way to introduce this kind of animation to people. It's bad enough that we had to like just get rid of 2D animation altogether. If you're going to replace something as iconic as 2D animation with 3D animation, at least give us a reason to be like, oh wow, yeah, this is the future.
If Disney put that transition in the hands of somebody like Chris Sanders, it probably would have gone a lot smoother for them.
Absolutely.
It didn't happen. He went over. Well, I guess he's back at Disney now, unless he sticks with DreamWorks.
I would have probably named it something else though, because personal preference, I have a thing about movies with the word American at the beginning. And there's just too many of those. Like, okay, we already had American Beauty, whatever, I'll let it slide for the most part. And then we had
American Psycho,
American Gigolo,
Pie,
American Pie,
American History X.
And then at some point I was just like, I don't understand why we're putting the word American in front of it. Like, or
the side boob classic American Hustle.
That one. If they just called it Hustle, or if they just called it, well, I guess they couldn't call it Psycho.
It feels like it's made for just one audience and there to exclude everyone else.
I feel like these stories are pretty universal. I don't know why.
Are there other movies that start with like British something or Australian something?
I personally would love to see, Philippine Hustle.
I understand it now. And American Dog does kind of feel like a lazy title. It's kind of like if you took Mulan and it was like the China story.
Exactly.
It's like, no, we probably shouldn't do that.
I disagree. I like American Dog as a title. I think it works, especially when it's supposed to be about like a TV star. It works for me. I'm going to disagree with you guys.
Well, here's some better titles. Number 1, Life is Rough. Let's go bark home. Pause the movie. We're going on an adventure. There you go. We did it. I changed the titles. Those are terrible, but I just want you to know how I feel about American Dog. That's what it sounds like to me. There you go.
Well, that's all I have on American Dog.
I don't have any other final thoughts. Do you have anything else to say, Alexa?
This is the second time you've brought me to a Disney movie that did not get created, and usually it has something to do with the studio. So really, I'm just angry at studios now. I've changed. I was a different person before I got into this podcast. It's just so sad to know of the classics we could have had if studios did not put their butts in the way, but
To go back to your other episode, Tin Toy Christmas, I'm glad we got Toy Story instead of Tin Toy Christmas.
That's true.
This is something I'll definitely agree with you that it is upsetting that we didn't get to see what Chris Sanders' vision was.
So tampering sometimes is good. It's just sad just knowing what could have happened. And well, again, I guess it's all about taking a risk. I did want to mention though, as well, for all of you Disney fans out there, if you are just getting into pin trading, Stitch is a very popular choice. In fact, if you are a pin trader or you just started, if you see any Stitch pin on the board, take it. Even if you're not a fan of Stitch, you can get such great pins just by having a lot of Stitch pins. I do have a Stitch section. Dan, I'm pretty sure we brought you pin trading with us.
You have, yes. I actually checked my lanyard and it does not have a Stitch pin at all. So.
We're going to change that.
I don't think pin trading is going to be much of a thing anymore.
Says you, honey.
Since they're getting rid of annual pass program, pin traders, that's an annual pass holder thing.
You're wrong. Pin trading will live forever and ever, according to my Instagram. Yeah.
I feel like there will, still be people with pins, but I think it's significantly less of a thing.
We'll see who's right this time.
Well, thank you everybody so much for listening, and thank you, Alexa, for being on the show.
Thank you.
If people want to find more of what you got going on, where can they find that?
I'm still on this podcast called Come On Fahuga Pods, thankfully. It's also on Pipe Dream Podcast. You can also catch me on the Twitch, and you can find me on twitch.tv/Miss Phasma. On Wednesdays, I usually play wacky and spooky games, hence Wacky Spooky Wednesday. And on Fridays, usually are just chatty makeup days. So if you want to see some really weird makeup looks, come join me on Fridays. Twitch.tv/Miss Phasma. There you go.
Yeah. And you can find more episodes of this podcast as well as Come On Fahuga Pods at our website, pipedreampodcasts.com. You can also find shows like Escape from Walt Disney and The Weird Alphabet there. You can find us on Twitter. We are at HDTNGM, and on Instagram at How Did This Not Get Made? You can send us your emails, notgetmade@gmail.com. And you can also sign up for our Patreon page. We love everybody who is able to support this show and our other shows. You can find that link at pipedreampodcasts.com. But that Patreon page supports this show, Come On Fahuga Pods, previous feeds, and anything new we decide to do. Yeah, and on that feed for $2 a month, you get a special monthly show. For $5 a month, you get notes from all of the episodes, all of the research that we go through on this podcast, and more. Well, thank you, everybody, once again for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
It's over! Sorry. I don't